A man loses the love of his life. He rejects God, becomes immortal, and spends centuries trying to reunite with her. Dracula is not just a horror story, it's a spiritual mirror. In the movie, Dracula loses the woman he loves, and instead of letting go, he rejects God, time, and reality itself. He becomes immortal. But here's the truth no one tells you. Immortality in this story is not power, it's a prison. Dracula spends centuries looking for her, but is he really looking for her? Or is he trying to hold on to a version of himself that existed with her? So in the beginning, Dracula truly loved, but when love asked him to let go, he chose to hold on. And that's when love turned into a curse. And so the core illusion begins with love as possession, because Dracula doesn't love, he clings. What he calls love is memory, attachment, and refuses to accept loss. He's not searching for her. He's trying to preserve a version of himself that existed with her, which becomes another illusion. Without you, I'm incomplete. And that's not love. That's identity dependency. Before Mina appears, he seeks death multiple times, but he cannot succeed. Not because he lacks the will, but because he is bound to continue. At first, it looks like he wants to escape pain, but the repetition reveals something more subtle. He's still holding on to her. He's still holding on to the past, holding on to who he was. And so even in trying to die, he is still attached. This is the core tension. He wants release, but he doesn't want to let go. And because of that, his end doesn't come. Not as punishment, but because nothing has truly ended within him. But when he meets Mina, something changes. Not because she completes him, but because she brings the illusion to the surface. She forces him to see what he's been holding on to and what hasn't been real for centuries. Because when he rejects God, something deeper happens. He doesn't just cast divinity, he chooses form over truth. He chooses story over reality, memory over presence, and past over now. And that's the birth of Dracula. Dracula drinking blood isn't just physical, it represents life force, aliveness, and presence. Because Dracula is a vampire, he cannot generate his own, so he takes from others, feeds on their vitality, survives, but never lives. And so spiritually, the ego cannot create life, it can only borrow it. That's why validation feels temporary. Pleasure fades and nothing satisfies for long, because you keep needing more. The ego has no true existence of its own. It's constructed from memories, labels, and attachments. And if you take those away, there's nothing solid there. At first glance, immortality seems like power, but in this story, it's hell. Why? Because he cannot let go. He cannot die to the past and dissolve the identity. And so he repeats longing, searching, and suffering. And this becomes the real curse. When Dracula meets Mina, something changes. She appears as his lost love, but spiritually she is a trigger, not a destination. She brings up memory, desire, and hope, but also attachment, illusion, and unfinished identity. And so she's not there to complete him, she's there to expose him to himself. The priest in the movie represents truth, dissolution, divine order, not evil or enemy. He is death of illusion. And so Dracula feels threatened because truth feels like death to the ego. This is not a love story. It's about the inability to let go of what no longer is, and what that creates: obsession, suffering, and spiritual stagnation. And so where in your life right now are you saying, I cannot be without this? That's your Dracula. In the movie, Dracula doesn't need more time, more love, or reunion. He needs one thing: surrender. Because the only way out is not the fulfillment of his desire, but the death of the one who desires. And that's deep. And so Dracula finally finds her, Mina, the woman who carries the essence of his lost wife. For a moment, it feels like after all this time, I found you. But something is different. She is not fully the same, fully his, fully the past. And that cracks the illusion. This is the moment where everything slowly begins to collapse, because Dracula is forced to face three things. She is not his memory. The past cannot return, and what he loved is gone. Not transformed or hidden, simply gone. This is where most human beings resist. But Dracula has resisted for centuries. And at the end, there are only two paths. Continue the illusion, that is, to keep chasing, to keep feeding, to keep existing as Dracula, or let go, to release her, to release the past, to release himself. And here's the truth. He cannot let her go without letting himself die, because she's not separate from his identity anymore. And so when Dracula finally decides to sacrifice his life for Nina, it's the dissolution of the false self, because the seeker disappears and the obsession ends. Time collapses. And for the first time, no hunger, no past, no becoming, just silence. It feels like tragedy, but it isn't. On the surface, he loses her again. He dies or love fails, but spiritually nothing really was lost. And what ends is attachment, illusion, identity. The pain comes from the perspective of the ego. From truth, it's freedom. The story doesn't end with death. It ends with release from the need to continue. Dracula was never searching for her. He was avoiding emptiness, stillness, the end of I. And in the end, that's exactly where he returns. Dracula was not cast with immortality. He was cast with the inability to let go. And the moment he finally did, he didn't die. He became free. After all those failed attempts to end his eternal suffering, death only becomes possible when he stops chasing, stops resisting, he stops holding the past together. He couldn't die when he wanted escape. He could only die when he was ready to let go. So the question becomes, where in your life are you still holding on? Because you don't suffer because something ended. You suffer because part of you refuses to. Because somewhere along the way, you didn't just experience it, you built yourself around it. An identity, a story, a version of me that only exists if that person, that story, that moment, or that feeling remains. And when life moves as it always does, it doesn't just feel like you lost something, it feels like you've been undone. So you hold on not to love, but to the version of you that love once created. And that holding becomes pain, not sharp at first, but constant, quiet, and heavy. Because identity, when built on something that has passed, it has to keep on resisting what is. It has to keep on resisting the present moment, because it lives in memory, in replay, in what was and what should have been. But life only ever happens here, in this moment. And the more you return to it, not the memory, not the story, not the past, not the idea of yourself, but this breath, awareness, being, something begins to soften. Not because you forced it or fixed anything, but because what you are holding was never truly here. And without that grip, there is nothing to defend, nothing to continue, nothing to become, just presence. And in presence, there is no identity to protect, so there is no pain to carry, only a quiet kind of peace that was never lost, only calm.